Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us tonight, Miguel Delaney, the chief football writer of The Independent, and the athletics football correspondent, David Ornstein. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run you through those back pages, starting in The Guardian, with wily old fox Jamie Vardy earning Leicester a point on their return to the Premier League. They also cover Raheem Sterling fearing for his Chelsea future as Joao Felix prepares to return to West London. More on that in The Telegraph, where they see the Felix deal spells the end for Sterling. And it is a busy old time at Chelsea, as it always is. The Athletic reports that Conor Gallagher finally looks set to depart for Atletico Madrid. Now that Felix deal is happening, David's co-written that piece with his colleague Liam Toomey. And issues at Chelsea go beyond transfers. Miguel has written a piece looking at the decision to make Enzo Fernandez the captain yesterday in light of his controversial behaviour while away with Argentina at the Copa America. But we will start with the first Monday night football of the season. Leicester City won, Tottenham Hotspur won. A point for Steve Cooper on their return to the Premier League. And Miguel, it had to be Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, and it almost had to go like that. I mean, I was watching that game for about an hour and thinking Spurs should be more than 1-0 up. There was always a danger why they didn't add to it. Solanke, maybe, it is his Premier League debut, but he maybe didn't go as well as he would have hoped. And at the other end, of course, Vardy is exactly the sort of player that shows you the peril of missing chances like that and what he can do. More relevantly, what he can still do, which is remarkable, especially as I was listening to Gary Neville speak to him just after the game and talk about how the expectation was that his pace and sharpness might go as he gets older. There doesn't feel any of that. Okay, he might be able to play the number of games he used to, but there's a sharpness still there. And not just in terms of football, given that he celebrated the point by pointing to the Champions badge that Leicester have, of course, and Tottenham don't from the Premier League.
Yeah, actually, David, I was just about to mention that sort of little reference to the Tottenham fans as to how many titles they'd won compared to Leicester. But it is that sort of pugnacious fighting spirit that you feel Leicester will really have to grab hold of this season. We expect potentially points deductions to come round the corner. It is going to be a struggle and a fight if Leicester are going to stay up.
Yeah, the build-up hasn't been nice at all to this Premier League return. I mean, no sooner had they won the Championship than they were embroiled in the PSR controversies, potentially one or two punishments coming their way. And that means that it could get pretty bad at some point this season. And they know they need to collect points as early as possible. And you were hearing suggestions that pre-season wasn't going too well. You could see that the transfer window wasn't sort of really spectacular for them for the most part. But then they got this little boost today with the news that Oliver Skipp had signed from Tottenham, coincidentally. And the atmosphere, you could see at the King Power Stadium before kickoff with the light show and everything. And we know that place can raise this team and club. And with Steve Cooper there, who has Premier League experience himself with Nottingham Forest, they managed to resist, and I don't know how Tottenham weren't out of sight by half-time. The game should have been over. They were dominant and very impressive, Spurs. But it's a familiar feeling, and just before coming on air, I was seeing a lot of commentary from Tottenham fans just saying it's the same old thing. We can't finish our chances. We're not ruthless. And Leicester galvanised. They took advantage of that. And it will feel like a victory tonight for them. And you saw Vardy, wily old fox, excuse the pun, and he seems to get better with age. And sort of, he's a winner. And he wasn't even meant to play tonight. But that sort of epitomizes the standard that you need to see from across this team. They've got Winks in there now as well, with the season under his belt, and a lot of quality if you look at that starting lineup tonight. So, look, they're going to be in with a fighting chance this season. And despite what may come their way, this is a positive way to get going.
Miguel, just to pick up on a couple of points that David made there, and I'm loath to make sort of sweeping statements after one game of a Premier League season, but you do sort of feel, as David said, that Tottenham should have had that match done. And with the competition for the top four as fierce as we expect it to be this season, these are points even now they can ill afford to be dropping.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, when I was doing my, as all of us who appear in the show have to do a kind of pre-season predictions, I was very close to putting Tottenham in the top four. But I suppose what ultimately restrains it is that although I actually think, say, Tottenham play to a better idea of football. They're better drill, say, than Manchester United right now. But I suppose just because of the outlook of the club, and in some senses this isn't a bad thing, but I know it's been obviously such a debate for Spurs fans for so long, that individual quality is always maybe some way lacking. It's always based in kind of players that will grow rather than players have it right now. And I suppose you can maybe see the cost of that when it comes to that leap from getting a certain amount of points, like good healthy points, to the point threshold that gets you into the top four. And I mean, again, as I say about that idea, I think on the whole, Postecoglou has been such a bright manager for the Premier League. I really like his attitude, his football. And yet, to be fair, as with Spurs themselves, there are still flaws that can be picked in his approach, especially as regards the robustness of the team at times and how often he goes. I suppose he's almost an absolutist in that sense, in that rather than make obvious that people would think are obvious solutions to some defensive issues, and we know set pieces come so much, he believes the solution is actually to be more pragmatic, actually in attack, and solve it in attack. And that's admirable in some ways, but I suppose it's going to be a question until he gets over the line in the Premier League like this.
Let's move on to another of the clubs that will hope to be in the mix for Champions League football come the end of the season, David, which is Chelsea. There are all sorts of stories across the papers, whether it focuses on Raheem Sterling's future, whether it's on the impending arrival of Joao Felix. You've written about the impending departure of Conor Gallagher. If someone said to you to summarise what Chelsea are trying to do, what would your answer be?
Well, Miggs and I were there on Sunday, and it was another example of how far they've got to go to catch up with the likes of Manchester City. They actually played pretty well. But to answer your question specifically, clearly the new ownership is hugely ambitious. They think they can bring Chelsea back to the top of domestic and potentially even European football. It's going to take a lot of time. And they felt that they had a lot of cleaning to do after the previous regime. Chelsea lost players as free agents, Christensen, Rudiger. They had players on massive salaries who have since moved on. And the turnaround and the overhaul of the squad has been remarkable. You can't keep count of the number of players who have come and have left, maybe coming and maybe leaving, staff, executives as well. It's a new football club, really. And I think evidently they want to get the top young talent in the world. You can see that from Chelsea's team and squad, and the young Brazilians, for example, that have come to the club or at least on their books or are coming in the future. And they're bringing down the wage bill significantly, and they certainly hope to continue work on that. But at some point, they're going to have to deliver. And it's been a couple of years now. Enzo Maresca, the latest manager to take on or coach to take on the mantle. And finally, they'll hope that, a manager, coach puts an identity on their style of play, that they can continue to remain compliant with the financial rules, which, whether people like it or not, they have done so far, and they're adamant they will continue to do. So there is a project to try and revolutionize this club. But at the moment, it clearly is taking time, and there could be a lot of pain along the way.
Miggs, I remember listening a few times to Mauricio Pochettino talk towards the end of last season, and I got the sense of a man who wasn't ever going to be hugely disappointed if there was a parting of ways, which ultimately there was. And you do wonder how much of a say Enzo Maresca is having in certain decisions that are being made at Chelsea at the moment. Now, he might not want Raheem Sterling. That might be one of his decisions, but you don't feel like all of the decisions are his.
I mean, it does feel like he's been selected on the basis of being this very modern, and to be fair, actually a continental role that's been in place for some time, 30 years really, of a head coach rather than any sort of manager, someone that essentially sets the tactics and picks the team. Obviously some influence, but as you say, it's limited. And yeah, I mean, David referenced how we were both there yesterday. As I was sat there actually and kind of going through the programme and with influenced by an excellent piece that Sam Wallace did for the Telegraph for Saturday, I was thinking like this club, almost everything at it has changed bar the stadium, which of course is the one thing that the previous ownership wanted to change. Now, obviously, there are far bigger and serious issues at play here, given Abramovich's sanctioning that ultimately forced him to lose the club and the potential consequences of that. Because, I mean, one aspect where Chelsea's transfer business at least makes more sense is if it is anticipation. I'm not saying this is definite, but it is being talked about in football. If it's anticipation that they do have a transfer ban when this investigation into payments from Abramovich era has an outcome, which is expected to be in November. And just to add to that as well, the current hierarchy have been very compliant with it. As David said there, they've had to kind of almost go through everything from the Abramovich era.
The Felix thing is interesting, David, as well, because it seems part of that is related to Conor Gallagher eventually departing. One of the points you would make is it doesn't seem a brilliant way to treat someone like Conor Gallagher, to take him to Spain, bring him back, leave him in limbo just before the start of a new season. But also, again, this muddled thinking of a guy who was captain last season who is now on his way out.
Yeah, I think there are two sides to that, honestly. Conor Gallagher had a choice with the contract that was presented to him, 2 + 1 years. Everybody says, well, the rest of their players are getting 6, 7, 8, 9-year contracts. But that was deemed to be, the right offer for somebody that wasn't a regular starter at the time. And Chelsea say that they were doing it as much for him and the possibility that he might want to leave at some point as for them. He declined to take that. And so he's in a position now where they, like many clubs, would rather sell than lose him for free in 12 months' time. And they don't feel that he is ideally suited to the style of play that Enzo Maresca wants to exhibit with his midfield in particular. And in terms of the deal you reference, yeah, Chelsea struck an agreement of sorts with Atletico Madrid, and he flew over there. It was obviously Chelsea's decision not to go ahead with the Samu Omarodian deal, and that had implications on the Gallagher deal. But it was Atletico Madrid who weren't able to go ahead with the Conor Gallagher deal, and that's why he ultimately flew back. It wasn't really Chelsea leaving him in limbo. It is a dramatic scene that kind of fits into everything that's been going on there at the moment, but ultimately it's coming to a conclusion now because João Felix is going to come. You can debate that all you like. Do they need another attacker? He underwhelmed somewhat in his loan spell with Chelsea. What does it mean for Raheem Sterling, Noni Madueke, etc.? Is that the position they need the most as opposed to a central striker? We'll see if one comes in before the deadline. But now Conor Gallagher will, by the looks of it, get his move. It's close to being finalised and the saga being brought to an end. It will be sad for many Chelsea fans to see him go, but these situations do happen with a player who's into his last year of contract.
Yeah, Migs, talking of sagas, that Raheem Sterling rather took over as the main talking point yesterday. But to reference your piece from today, Enzo Fernandez, as Chelsea captain, was tone-deaf, clumsy and wrong after those alleged videos of homophobic and racist chanting after the Copa America. The piece goes on to say it's another case of football talking the talk on these major societal issues, principally because of their corporate branding, but then walking a different path when it comes to the bottom line of the football. Did that decision to give Fernandez the armband yesterday leave a sour taste in your mouth?
I have to say, when I saw it, I was staggered. Now, I know after the game, Maresca insisted, because he spoke about the players, it wasn't much of an issue, that Fernandez had been captain in pre-season and the players weren't bothered. And also he did make the point as well that, he apologised. Obviously, the club had an investigation, and you can't keep punishing for someone like that forever. Even if that's true, though, that doesn't mean the immediate follow-on is to essentially reward them with a role that still has really symbolic status in football, a role of leadership. And let's not forget as well, it's giving him that while he's still under investigation for FIFA, given that it essentially falls under their jurisdiction rather than that of the English authorities. And from that perspective, Chelsea are a club that have actually, despite certain perceptions from the past, they're a club that have done a lot of very progressive work in terms of racism, in terms of discrimination over the last 20 years. And I suppose this just feels like it runs up against that a bit. At the very most, or at the very least, it just felt tone deaf, and a bit blind to the wider significance.
Yeah, and just to sort of reference the point that Miggs was making there, David, in his piece, that too often that there are a lot of, and this is a regular sort of criticism of the game in whole, perhaps sport as a whole, actually, too many platitudes, too many banners, and too often when it really counts, a sort of blind eye is turned.
Yeah, we see that time and again. And also when money's involved and when the stakes are high, when there's success, a match to be won in this case, then people seem to be blinkered to the reality of what's happened. There was a slightly concerning comment at the end of one of Maresca's answers where he sort of explained why he did it, and then at the end and sort of said, we've come through this in pre-season, and so it's not important. And I sort of thought to myself, it really is important what happened, and that symbolism of that player wearing the armband. Now, we could be accused of dragging it out, but I don't think that's the case. And it seems that football sport wants to take these issues into their heart when they want to and when there's initiatives. But when it doesn't suit them or it's not so comfortable, it's almost like sweeping it under the carpet and turning a blind eye. And that's just not right.
Gentlemen, we will take a breather there for just a moment. Lots more to come, though, on Back Pages tonight. When we come back, we will have a look at Erling Haaland, who played his part in Manchester City's opening win on his 100th game for the club. Welcome back to Back Pages. Tonight we're in the company of Miguel Delaney, the chief football writer of The Independent, and the Athletics football correspondent David Ornstein. Let's head into the eye, and an interesting back page from them. Gundogan in line for a sensational return to the Etihad. Could Manchester City get their former captain Ilkay Gundogan back from Barcelona, who've made him available for a transfer? David Ornstein, a fabulous player at 33 years old. It doesn't feel very Manchester City, this, but can you see it happening?
It doesn't, but he is such an important player in their history. He was the captain who led them to the treble. He was Pep Guardiola's first signing, if you remember. He arrived injured. Pep Guardiola stood by him. He integrated him into the side. I was there one night at the Etihad when he scored twice against Barcelona, actually. Got another knee injury, came back from that even better. There was a season where he went on a crazy goal-scoring run, was involved in so many of their famous moments and led the side so adeptly. It's not gone right at Barcelona. He's clearly got a good relationship with Pep Guardiola still and the club hierarchy and players. I think he saw them on their respective pre-season tours. And Manchester City have always been of the view in this market that they might do something a bit unexpected, opportunistic if it comes their way. Now, we don't know they're going to do this for sure, but it's something they're interested in, they're exploring. Clearly, there's some sentimental value there on Gundogan's part, and it would be fascinating to see. Those knee injuries time out, what he did physically and mentally probably added time onto his career. He doesn't rely on pace. He's a fantastic player who's still got a lot to give, I believe. We've seen him at international level, although he's retired, which could help his club career. That news came out today. And he's an amazing person too. So I would love to see it, whether it be Manchester City, elsewhere in the Premier League. We're biased, aren't we? But there are also clubs interested in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So we'll have to wait and see where he ends up.
It could be ominous for the rest of the Premier League. Talking of which, Miguel, one of the Daily Express lines on their back page, Erling's warning shot. City striker has never felt better. Erling Haaland scored his 91st goal for Manchester City on his 100th appearance against Chelsea that you watched on Sunday. And it seems significant, actually, in these days of never-ending football, that one of the world's star players has had a summer off to sort of recharge the batteries and get ready to go again.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the one, I suppose, advantage of playing for a country that at the moment infrequently qualifies, although Norway are developing a lot of talent. Also, I mean, we mentioned the kind of pre-season predictions earlier. I think there's been a bit of a kind of a momentum, leaving aside the potential outcome of the Manchester City case and how the table could dramatically change. But maybe there has been, even say if even went as usual, there has been almost a sense that Arsenal are getting that bit closer to City. And I was very tempted to put them top even for that reason. And then I suppose you watch them on Saturday, and even without players that played in the Euro 2024 final, there's just a reminder of that. Sorry, watch them on Sunday. There's a reminder of that strength in depth. And of course, one of the biggest guarantees in football right now, which was emphasised by that line from Guardiola after the game, that Haaland's numbers are Messi, Ronaldo level. I mean, we are talking about, I think, a player that in modern football history is unique. Because obviously Ronaldo and Messi were very different type of players, and the quality we're talking about, this legendary status. But as a pure goal scorer, in terms of these numbers, we haven't really seen anything like this since maybe Gerd Muller in the 70s. Like this is now the kind of context we're talking about Haaland.
Let's finish on another striker then, David, and a lot of speculation right throughout the summer about where Ivan Toney might end up, and it's looking increasingly likely that those that are going to pay the 50 million quid that Brentford want might be in Saudi Arabia.
There's some very hard work going on behind the scenes to try and make it possible, because I don't think there are any other proposals on the table for Ivan Toney as things stand. Of course, the window's still open for a bit longer, and that could change. But Saudi Arabia seems to be, and Al Ahly in particular, the only opportunity to get the transfer fee that Brentford want, although they're not there yet, and also the personal terms too. It'd be a bit strange to see Ivan Toney in his peak years, especially just off the back of the Euros, going and playing in the SPL. It would be great for the SPL, of course, to get a player of such caliber, and as they try and grow their league. But it's a bit surprising that none of the Premier League clubs have really come in strongly for him. A year to go on his contract. Maybe they were eyeing free agency next summer, but it seems the direction of travel is Al Ahly, but it's not done yet.
Just finally, David, if we can squeeze in, I think you've got something to tell us on Aaron Ramsdale.
Yeah, we just broke the story before coming on air that Aaron Ramsdale is the subject of an offer now from Wolverhampton Wanderers. Ajax, Southampton have shown interest so far. Arsenal prefer to let him go permanently and a sale so that they can fund a replacement. Their target is Juan Garcia of Espanyol, but Wolves have made an offer, loan with an option to buy, and they would cover the majority of his salary. So efforts are really being made now by Arsenal, by Aaron Ramsdale, and by other clubs to get this move, having slipped behind David Raya in the pecking order. And it would be great to see him starting again somewhere, because he deserves it. He's a good keeper and also a great character.
Just quickly, Miguel, he needs to go and play football, doesn't he? So a good move this would feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's mostly been unlucky in the Arsenal situation, given that I suppose it really comes down to interpretation of how you use your feet. That has been a difference for him. And yeah, I think he needs a move. He needs regular football. And I think he deserves still to be at that sort of level.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed to Miguel and to David. A quick reminder, if you've missed any of the show, there is always another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. And the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And join us again on Tuesday night, where our guests will be Mark Ogden and Charlotte Dunker at Sky Sports News at 10:30 for that one.